Dylan Ratigan left MSNBC. He had a 4 o'clock program. They have moved Martin Bashir up to 4 o'clock, so now they have a hole at 3 o'clock, which they're planning to fill. News comes out from Politico that apparently they're considering a number of rotating hosts, some of whom I think are fantastic. Steve Kornacki is a brilliant writer at Salon. I think he's terrific. Touré, I've been on with many times on MSNBC. I think he's a really smart guy. Ezra Klein is absolutely brilliant in many ways. I totally disagree with him on many issues, by the way, but there's nothing wrong with that. He's a smart guy, and to have it within the progressive spectrum is great. Crystal Ball is a conservative, and then, of course, the controversial one, S.E. Cupp. Now, S.E. Cupp is a right-winger. I disagree with her on our policies. I don't find much inherent value in her presentation. Now, of course, on TV, they're obsessed. Oh, my God, it's a right-winger. That doesn't sound entirely insane, although one could argue at times. And can we keep it real here for a second? And she's an attractive young woman. Must have her. So the question is, does it make sense for a progressive network to have some conservative hosts? And I think that's actually a really interesting question. And part of the reason I'm doing this is because I want to ask you guys, right? So we have some opinions on it, but actually I'm more curious about the audience's opinion than anything else. In fact, we decided to put up a poll on current.com/the Young Turks on whether you think a progressive network should have conservative hosts from time. I think we should definitely have conservative guests. No question, I think we should hear from everybody. Now, it's also a fair argument as to whether MSNBC is a progressive network, given that, as Mediaite recently wrote, I think it was Tommy Christopher wrote, look, their most influential show, honestly, is The Morning Joe. And I think that's absolutely true. Now, Rachel Maddow has a much larger audience. So does Ed Schultz, so does Lawrence O'Donnell, et cetera, their primetime audience. But in Washington, they're obsessed with Morning Joe because it's the perfect right-wing conventional wisdom show. All the mainstream media go on there, all the Republicans go on there, all the Democratic hacks go on there. It's a perfect Washington show. They're like, yes, they tell us all the right-wing positions are correct while pretending to be reasonable and centrist and bipartisan. So is MSNBC even progressive? I don't know. It's a fair question. But, you know, if you think they're a progressive network, does it make sense to get, as they get closer to prime time, obviously 3 o'clock's really in the middle of the day, is to have a conservative host on? All right, let's get started by asking Anna Kasparian.
Ricky's excited because he thinks I'm going to bash S.E. Cupp. But more than anything else, I want to bash the way the mainstream media works, right? Because it's all about whether or not their coverage is going to be polarizing. It's about, you know, hiring people not based on merit, not based on their achievements or their intellect, based on superficial reasons that don't make sense at all. I think of Dylan Ratigan and his position on MSNBC, and he was one of the best hosts, okay? Honest, aggressive with his message, and, you know, very informative while also being entertaining. And now they're thinking about replacing him with S.E. Cupp, a girl who wrote a book that makes absolutely no sense about how Christianity is being demonized in this country when that's not happening at all. Like, that's the thing that amazes me the most. So more than anything, I'm depressed at the state of journalism in this country. I feel like journalism no longer exists. The mainstream media is garbage. And I feel like there's nothing we can do about it other than try to bring truth on our own program and try to inform people on what the reality is. And I know that sounds really cheesy, right? But I hate this whole, okay, Fox News is conservative, MSNBC is progressive. No, why don't you guys report on what the facts are?
Right. And, you know, we try to do that, of course, in our own way. We totally admit our perspective, but we get into trouble with Democrats all the time, obviously, famously so in some instances, because we don't care about partisan games, right? But unfortunately, there's a lot of partisan games being played on the mainstream media, Fox, and to some degree MSNBC. But ironically, they would turn around and go, see, we're not partisan because we're bringing in S.E. Cupp. There's something a little soul-wrenching about the idea of replacing Dylan Ratigan in any way, shape, or form with S.E. Cupp.
And
there's
also
something that makes you go, and like twist you in knots. Like, I know at a gut level there's something wrong with that.
I feel like if they do decide on her replacing Dylan Ratigan, she will be the Erin Burnett of MSNBC. Completely hollow, doesn't really have a real message, and just an attractive woman who got hired for ratings, but it didn't work out.
Now, and we don't know, and they're going to have a rotating panel, and I said it appears, according to the reporting, and a lot of the other guys on there are terrific, so, you know, reserve judgment on the show, whatever form it happens to be in at the end. But also remember, by the way, S.E. Cupp is part of Glenn Beck's online network. She was the second person, I believe, to get a show in Glenn Beck's network. So there's got to be something a little weird about MSNBC putting on somebody from Glenn Beck's network when Fox News wouldn't even put on Glenn Beck. So I guess strained times, but look, I think it's a legitimate point of view to say, no, you should have a diverse viewpoints, including conservatives, especially on a show that has apparently a number of co-hosts. I have no problem with having diversity in terms of perspectives and ideas. I think that could actually make the network better. But the question is S.E. Cupp the person you want to represent that message? And I leave it up to MSNBC. I feel like you can probably find someone better. The questions at current.com/the Young Turks. As soon as we have your answers, we'll report it probably on Current TV tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern.